They live is partially a political statement, it's partially a tract on the world that we live in today. And as a matter of fact, right now, it's even more true than it was then. We are manipulated by a lot of media around us. We are consumed by consumerism. And as you can see in the recent events in this country, they are still among us. They do live.
Our impulses are being redirected. We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep. The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. They have created a repressive society, and we are their unwitting accomplices. Their intention to rule rests with the annihilation of consciousness. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others. We are focused only on our own gain. Please understand, they are safe as long as they are not discovered. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
The truth hurts because the truth is all there is. The truth hurts because the truth is all there is. You can't hide from the truth, 'cause the truth is all there is. You can't hide from the truth, 'cause the truth is all there is. You can't hide from the truth, 'cause the truth is all there is. You can't hide from the truth, 'cause the truth is all there is. You can't hide from the truth, because the truth is all there is. You can't hide from the truth, 'cause the truth is all there is. You can't hide from the truth, because the truth is all there is. You can't hide from the truth. You can't hide.
Welcome to the show that explores the social dynamics and psychological forces that shape our world, much like the pecking order in a chicken coop. Why is society structured in rigid hierarchies? Why do we instinctively follow authority? And how is our belief in this structure manipulated to control us? We'll explore the layers of social conditioning, the psychology behind obedience, the hidden mind control techniques that influence our lives, and the universal moral laws that stand in stark contrast to manufactured authority. This is the Coop Files. Welcome. Today's date is the 26th of February 2026, Thursday. I'm just going to skip the usual housekeeping because I just wanted to do a very quick presentation if I can actually get through something quickly after my last 5-hour marathon fumbling around in the dark. So today's show, I would just like to cover something called The Coward's Bargain by Josh Stileman. This is something that I came across on the internet, an article I think on Substack by this gentleman, which just kind of resonated with me, 99% of it. And I just wanted to give a voice to it. Just returned from a nice relaxing week away. Myself and my family got some sun on our backs for a week in Lanzarote, which was very nice. Get away from the shit show, which is the UK. It's very briefly got on the plane to leave. please let me know if anybody's come across this situation. You get on the plane, we're always towards the back of the queue because we don't like queuing. We just wait till the queue's died right down and then go. You've got your seat. It's reserved. Who wants to sit on the plane anyway while everybody's loading up? So anyway, get to our seat number 13, row 13. And there's 3 boomers sitting in our seats. Same row, but on our side of the plane rather than their side of the plane. And my wife says, "Excuse me, but you're in our seats." And they just stare vacantly. "Oh, we know. We've gotten the wrong seats before, now we're in the wrong seats again." And they just didn't really look like they wanted to move. And I just said, "It's fine, we'll sit in their seats, it's the same row." I expect to go on a train. People get the wrong seats, wrong carriages, wrong trains. You expect occasionally to have to find somebody in your seat and throw them out. But a plane? Has anybody actually come across this before? Somebody sitting in your seat on a plane? Anyway, when they just seem so entitled. When do old people become entitled? When does it really kick in? And let me know, anybody who's of a certain age, let me know when that entitlement kicks in, so I can make sure that I exit this place before that happens. So back to the coward's bargain. So I'm reading this directly from the article from Josh Stileman. Someone our family has known forever recently told my sister that they've been reading my Substack, and that if they wrote the things I write, people would call them crazy. I got a kick out of that, not because it's untrue, but because it reveals something darker about where we've ended up as a society. Most people are terrified of being themselves in public. My sister's response made me laugh. People do call him crazy. He simply doesn't care. The funniest part is that I don't even write the craziest stuff I research, just the stuff I can back up with sources and or my own personal observations. I always try to stay rooted in logic, reason and facts, though I am clear when I'm speculating and when I'm not. This same guy has sent me dozens of private messages over the last 4 or 5 years, challenging me on stuff I share online. I respond with source material or common sense, and then crickets. He disappears. If I say something he doesn't want to hear, he vanishes like a child, covering his ears. Over the last few years, I've been proven right about most of what we've argued about, and he's been wrong, but it doesn't matter. He's got the memory of a gnat, and the pattern never changes. But he'd never make that challenge publicly, never risk being seen engaging with my arguments where others might witness the conversation. This kind of private curiosity paired with public silence is everywhere. People will engage with dangerous ideas in private, but never risk being associated with them publicly. It's part of that reflexive, that can't be true mindset that shuts down inquiry before it can even begin. But he's not alone. We've created a culture where wrongthink is policed so aggressively that even successful, powerful people whisper their doubts like they're confessing crimes. I was on a hike last year with a very prominent tech VC. He was telling me about his son's football team, how their practices kept getting disrupted because their usual field was now being used to house migrants. He leaned in, almost whispering, I'm liberal, but maybe the people complaining about immigration have a point. Here's a guy who invests mountains of money into companies that shape the world we live in, and he's afraid to voice a mild concern about policy in broad daylight, afraid of his own thoughts. After I spoke out against vaccine mandates, a co-worker told me he totally agreed with my position, but he was angry that I'd said it. When the company didn't want to take a stand, I told them I would speak as an individual, on my own time as a private citizen. He was pissed anyway. In fact, he was scolding me about the repercussions to the company. What's maddening is that this same person had enthusiastically supported the business taking public stands on other, more politically fashionable causes over the years. Apparently using your corporate voice was noble when it was fashionable. Speaking as a private citizen became dangerous when it wasn't. Another person told me that they agreed with me, but wished they were more successful like me, so they could afford to speak out. They had too much to lose. The preposterousness of this is staggering. Everyone who spoke out during COVID sacrificed financially, reputationally, socially. I sacrificed plenty myself. But I'm no victim, far from it. Since I was a young man, I never measured achievement by financial status. My benchmark for being a so-called successful person was owning my own time. Ironically, getting myself cancelled was actually a springboard to that. For the first time in my life, I felt I'd achieved time ownership. Whatever I've achieved came from being raised by loving parents, working hard, and having the spine to follow convictions rationally. Those attributes, coupled with some great fortune, are the reason for whatever success I've had. They're not the reason I can speak now. Maybe this person should do some inward searching about why they're not more established. Maybe it's not about status at all. Maybe it's about integrity. This is the adult world we've built, one where courage is so rare that people mistake it for privilege, where speaking your mind is seen as a luxury only the privileged can afford, rather than a fundamental requirement for actually becoming established. And this is the world we're handing to our children. We've built the surveillance state for them. I remember 20 years ago, my best friend's wife, who's also a dear friend, was about to hire somebody when she decided to check the candidate's Facebook first. The woman had posted, "Meeting the whores at such and such company," referring to my friend and her co-workers. My friend immediately withdrew the offer. I remember thinking this was absolutely terrible judgment on the candidate's part. However, it was dangerous territory we were entering. The notion of living completely in public where every casual comment becomes permanent evidence. Now that danger has metastasized into something unrecognizable, we have created a world where every stupid thing a 15-year-old says gets archived forever. Not just on their own phones, but screenshot and saved by peers who don't understand they're building permanent files on each other. Even on platforms like Snapchat that promise everything disappears, we've eliminated the possibility of private adolescence. And adolescence is supposed to be private, messy, experimental. It's the laboratory where you figure out who you are by trying on terrible ideas and throwing them away. But laboratories require the freedom to fail safely. What we've built instead is a system where every failed experiment becomes evidence in some future trial. Think about the dumbest thing you believed at 16. The most embarrassing thing that you said at 13. Now imagine that moment preserved in high definition, time-stamped and searchable. Imagine it surfacing when you're 35 and running for school board or just trying to move past who you used to be. If there was a record of everything I did when I was 16, I would have been unemployable. Come to think of it, I'm way older than that now and I'm unemployable anyway. But the truth still stands. My generation might have been the last to fully enjoy an analog existence as children. We've got to be stupid privately to experiment with ideas without permanent consequences, to grow up without every mistake being archived for future use against us. I remember teachers threatening us with our permanent record. We laughed. Some mysterious file that would follow us forever. Turns out they were just early. Now we've built those records and handed the recording devices to children. Companies like Palantir have turned this surveillance into a sophisticated business model. We're asking children to have adult judgment about consequences they can't possibly understand. A 13-year-old posting something stupid isn't thinking about college applications or future careers. They're thinking about right now, today, this moment, which is exactly how 13-year-olds are supposed to think. But we've built systems to treat childhood immaturity as prosecutable offences. The psychological toll is staggering. Imagine being 14 and knowing that everything you say might be used against you by people you haven't met yet, for reasons you can't anticipate, at some unknown point in the future. That's not adolescence. That's a police state built out of smartphones and social media. The result is a generation that's either paralysed of self-consciousness or completely reckless because they figure they've already screwed up, so retreat into careful blandness, crafting personas. Some retreat into careful blandness, crafting personas so sanitized they might as well become corporate spokespeople for their own lives. Others go scorched earth. If everything's recorded anyway, why hold back? As my friend likes to say, there's Andrew Tate and then there's a bunch of incels, meaning the young men either become performatively brash and ridiculous, or they retreat entirely. The young women seem to either drift towards fearful conformity or embrace monetized exposure on platforms like OnlyFans. We've managed to channel an entire generation's rebellion into the very systems designed to exploit them. The COVID conformity test. This is how totalitarian thinking takes root. Not through jackbooted thugs, but through a million small acts of self-censorship. When a venture capitalist whispers his concerns about immigration policy like he's confessing to a thought crime, when successful professionals agree with dissenting views privately but would never defend them publicly, when speaking obvious truths become an act of courage rather than basic citizenship. George Orwell understood this perfectly. In 1984, the party's greatest achievement wasn't forcing people to say things they didn't believe. It was making them afraid to believe things they weren't supposed to say. The party seeks power entirely for its own sake, O'Brien explains to Winston. We are not interested in the good of others. We are interested solely in power. But the real genius was making citizens complicit in their own oppression, turning everyone into both prisoner and God. History shows us how this works in practice. The Stasi in East Germany didn't just rely on secret police. They turned ordinary citizens into informants. By some estimates, 1 in 7 East Germans was reporting on their neighbours, friends, and even family members. The state didn't need to watch everyone. They got people to watch each other. But the Stasi had limitations. They could recruit informants, but they couldn't monitor everyone simultaneously. And they couldn't instantly broadcast transgressions to entire communities for real-time judgment. Social media has solved both problems. Now we have total surveillance capability. Every comment, photo, like and share automatically recorded and searchable. We have instant mass distribution, one screenshot reaching thousands in minutes. We have volunteer enforcement, people eagerly participating in calling out wrongthink because it feels righteous. And we have permanent records, unlike Stasi files located in archives. Digital mistakes follow you forever. The psychological impact is exponentially worse because Stasi informants at least had to make a conscious choice to report someone. Now the reporting happens automatically. The infrastructure is already listening, always recording, always ready to be weaponized by anyone with a grudge or a cause. We saw this machinery in full operation during COVID. Remember how quickly 2 weeks to flatten the curve became orthodoxy? How questioning lockdowns, mask mandates, or vaccine efficacy wasn't just wrong, it was dangerous. How saying maybe we should consider the trade-offs of closing schools could get you labelled a granny killer. The speed at which dissent became heresy was breathtaking. History has shown us that governments can be terrible to citizens. The hardest pill to swallow was the horizontal policing. Your neighbours, co-workers, friends and family members became the enforcement mechanism. People didn't just comply, they competed. Virtue signalling their way into a collective delusion where asking basic questions about cost-benefit analysis became evidence of moral deficiency. Neighbours called police on neighbours for having too many people over. People photographed violations and posted them online for mass judgment. And the most insidious part, the people doing the policing genuinely believed they were the good guys. They thought they were protecting society from dangerous misinformation, not realising they had become the misinformation, that they were actively suppressing the kind of open inquiry that's supposed to be the foundation of both science and democracy. The Ministry of Truth didn't need to rewrite history in real time. Facebook and Twitter did it for them, memory holding inconvenient posts and banning users who dared to share pre-approved scientific studies that happened to reach unapproved conclusions. The party didn't need to control the past. They just needed to control what you were allowed to remember about it. This wasn't an accident or an overreaction. This was a stress test of how quickly a free society could be transformed into something unrecognizable, and we failed spectacularly. Anyone who actually followed the science understood that the only pandemic was one of cowardice. Worse, most people didn't even notice we were being tested. They thought they were just following the science. Never mind that the data kept changing to match the politics, or that questioning anything had somehow become heretical. The beautiful thing about this system is that it's self-sustaining. Once you've participated in the mob mentality, once you've policed your neighbours and cancelled your friends and stayed silent when you should have spoken up, you become invested in maintaining the fiction that you were right all along. Admitting that you were wrong isn't just embarrassing, it's an admission that you participated in something monstrous. So instead you double down, you disappear when confronted with inconvenient facts. Raising prisoners. And this brings us back to children. They're watching all of this. But more than that, they're growing up inside this surveillance infrastructure from birth. The Stasi's victims at least had some years of normal psychological development before the surveillance state kicked in. These kids never get that. They're born into a world where every thought might be public, every mistake permanent, every unpopular opinion potentially life-destroying. The psychological impact is devastating. Research shows that children who grow up under constant surveillance, even well-meaning parental surveillance, show higher rates of anxiety, depression, and what psychologists call learned helplessness. They never develop internal locus of control because they never get to make real choices with real consequences. But this goes far deeper than helicopter parenting. The ability to hold unpopular opinions, to think through problems independently, to risk being wrong, these aren't just nice to haves. They're core to psychological maturity. When you eliminate those possibilities, you don't just get more compliant people. You get people who literally can't think for themselves anymore. They outsource their judgment to the crowd because they never develop their own. We're creating a generation of psychological cripples, people who are practiced at reading social cues and adjusting their thoughts accordingly, but who have never learned to form independent judgments, people who mistake consensus for truth. For fuck's sake, man. Sorry, where was I? We're creating a generation of psychological cripples, people who are practiced at reading social cues and adjusting their thoughts accordingly, but who have never learned to form independent judgments, people who mistake consensus for truth and popularity for virtue, people who have been so thoroughly trained to avoid wrongthink that they have either lost or never developed the capacity for original thought entirely. But here's what's most disturbing. The kids are learning this behaviour from us. They're watching adults who whisper their thoughts, who agree privately but stay silent publicly, who confuse strategic silence with wisdom. They're learning that authenticity is dangerous and having real convictions is a luxury they can't afford. They're learning that truth is negotiable, that principles are disposable, and that the most important skill in life is reading the room and adjusting your thoughts accordingly. The feedback loop is complete. Adults model cowardice. Children learn that genuine expression is risky, and everyone becomes practiced at self-censorship rather than self-examination. We've created a society where the Overton window isn't just narrow, it's actively policed by people who are terrified of stepping outside it, even when they privately disagree with its boundaries. This is the architecture of soft totalitarianism, just the constant gnawing fear that saying the wrong thing or even thinking it too loudly will result in social death. The beauty of this system is that it makes everyone complicit. Everyone has something to lose, so everybody stays quiet. Everyone remembers what happened to the last person who spoke up, so nobody wants to be next. The technology doesn't just enable this tyranny, it makes it psychologically inevitable. When the infrastructure punishes independent thinking before it can truly form, you get psychological arrested development on mass scale. It's already baked into education and employment through DEI, ESG. Wait till it's baked into the monetary system. Maybe they're just connecting us to the Borg anyway. We're passing this pathology down to our children like a genetic disorder, except this disorder isn't inherited, it's enforced. And unlike genetic disorders, this one serves a purpose. It creates a population that's easy to control, easy to manipulate, easy to lead around by the nose, as long as you control the social rewards and punishments. The price of truth. I don't share my opinions because I get away with it. I don't get away with anything. I've paid socially, professionally, and even financially, but I do it anyway because the alternative is spiritual death. The alternative is becoming someone who messages critics privately, but never takes a public stand. Somebody who who's perpetually annoyed by others' courage but never exercises their own. The difference isn't ability or privilege, it's willingness. I'm open-minded and open-hearted. I can be convinced of anything, but show me, don't tell me. I'm willing to be wrong, willing to change my mind when new information comes to light, or I gain a different perspective on an idea, willing to defend ideas I believe in even when it's uncomfortable. There are a lot of us right now realizing that something isn't right, that we've been lied to about everything. We're trying to make sense of what we're seeing, asking uncomfortable questions, connecting dots that don't want to be connected. When we call that out, the last thing we need is people who haven't done the work standing in our way, carrying water for the establishment forces that are manipulating them. Most people could do the same thing if they chose to. They just don't choose to because they've been trained to see conviction as dangerous and conformity as safe. A 2020 Cato Institute survey found that 62% of Americans say the political climate prevents them from sharing their political beliefs because others might find them offensive. Majorities of Democrats, 52%, Independents, 59%, and Republicans, 77%, all agree they have political opinions they are afraid to share. When adults who lived through COVID saw what happens when groupthink becomes gospel, how quickly independent thought gets labelled dangerous, how thoroughly dissent gets suppressed. Many respond not by becoming more committed to free expression, but by becoming more careful about what they express. They learned the wrong lesson. What we're creating in a society where authenticity has become a radical act, where courage is so rare it looks like privilege, we're raising children who learn that being yourself is dangerous and having real opinions carries unlimited downside risk. They're not just careful about what they say, they're careful about what they think. This doesn't create better people, it creates more fearful people. People who mistake surveillance for safety, conformity for virtue, and silence for wisdom. People who've forgotten that the point of having thoughts is sometimes to share them, that the point of having convictions is sometimes to defend them. The solution isn't to abandon technology or retreat into digital monasteries, but we need to create a space, legal, social, psychological, where both kids and adults can fail safely, where mistakes don't become permanent tattoos, where changing your mind is seen as growth rather than hypocrisy, where having convictions is valued over having clean records. Most importantly, we need adults who are willing to model courage instead of strategic silence, who understand that the price of speaking up is usually less than the price of staying quiet. In a world where everyone's afraid to say what they think, the honest voice doesn't just stand out, it stands up. Because right now, we're not just living in fear, we're teaching our children that fear is the price of participation in society. And a society built on fear isn't a society at all. It's just a more comfortable prison. One where the guards are ourselves and the keys are our own convictions, which we've learned to keep safely locked away. Whether it's experimental medicine or masters of war lying again to drag us into what might become World War III, it's PSYOP season. It's never been more important that people find their conviction, use their voice, and become a force for good. If you're still scared to push back against war propaganda, still getting swept up in manufactured outrage cycles, still choosing your principles based on which team is in power, then you may have learned absolutely nothing from the last few years. These days, friends are starting to confide in me that maybe I was right about the mRNA not working. I don't gloat. In fact, I appreciate the openness. but my standard reply is that they're 4 years late to the story. They'll know they've caught up when they realise the world is run by a bunch of satanic PDF files. And yeah, I used to think that sounded crazy too. End of article. So a lot of thought-provoking points there, which I tend to agree with. Don't really care about the political landscape if people are scared to share their political views. But I suppose if you still buy into that system, it does show how fear-based this control system has become, and we are the gods. We are our own gods, keeping each other fearful, compliant, good little conformists. I would just add that to this article. Failure to do the right thing, i.e. speak, stand up and be counted, do something. Failure to do the right thing when you know it to be right becomes a wrong behaviour or immoral. If you saw a child being abused, would you just walk on by? Funnily enough, I think a lot of people would these days, but you wouldn't. You would do something. So the act of not doing it must be wrong. It must be morally wrong not to do the right thing when you know the consequences and you choose to do nothing. And as stated in the article, it's a fear-based mentality or level of consciousness which simply leads to a comfortable prison, as he said, where no one is free. Instead, you are owned by the system, owns you, and therefore you're a slave. And if you're not free, what are you? If you're not free, is there a sliding scale? I'm a little bit free, so I'm free. Or, well, I'm only a slave 1 day a week. I pay 20% tax. I work 5 days a week. So 1 day a week I'm a slave. But, I let that go. No, it's not. You're either free or you're not. But in other words, this decline in morality, which is all it is, causes an increase in slavery, and we need to have the courage to do the right thing and get freedom back. When he says kids are learning that truth is negotiable, this ultimately becomes the ideology that truth is relative, based on the perceptions of the individual. And this has been programmed in to kids. This is almost a form of epi-eugenics. Once the kids learn this behaviour, who they're going to then teach it to their kids, to their kids, to their kids. And before you know it, the truth will be seen as something which is just relative. It doesn't really exist. It's just your perception. I know a few people like that. My truth, your truth. His truth, her truth. Dog's truth. It's your truth, son. This is somewhat solipsistic. This is the most dangerous ideology, and obviously leads to moral relativism, pure selfishness, atheistic thinking, which spreads to things like social Darwinism, and eugenics, man playing God, or soon AI playing God. This is a technological prison, ultimately, where we police ourselves. Technology being used for social engineering at its best, and we are the willing architects building the walls of the prison and happily leading our children to the gates of hell. I just wanted to cover a couple of personal anecdotes which kind of seem fitting. The first one is just in relation to, if we go back to the 2020 PSYOP, which it was an apocalypse in many, many ways. It was a grand apocalypse. Not only were you able to see behind the veil and figure out that we are being lied to about pretty much everything, and that there is a control system and an agenda. But it also was a great apocalypse to show you who is who in society. Friends, family, colleagues. Based on courage. So I was in a social circle of about 7, maybe 8 other men. And the circle kind of formed into 3 little groups. Maybe there was 9 of us. Maybe there was 9 or 10 of us. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The one little group that I fell into, just, communicating on WhatsApp, there was 3 of us, and we seemed to be somewhat aligned with regards to the nonsense. And when I say somewhat, they knew that it was, in their minds, be careful because I'm speaking on behalf of somebody else, but in their minds, they knew the science wasn't actually being followed. They weren't following the science. The science was following the policy. They knew that it was BS in that sense. They knew that putting a nappy over your face made no difference. They had seen the signs, the real signs on that. They knew that was absolute horse manure. And they knew it was being somewhat exaggerated, I suppose. And I suppose that's all I really need to say. And, I thought that, they were the only type of people out of normies. They were the only type of people I could even tolerate at the time. This was all new for me, as in, I was somewhat aware pre-2020, but OMG, what a slap around the chops with a wet fish that was when that came. But anyway, but they did nothing, and they just kowtowed to authority ultimately. Still wore their nappies in public, just went along with it, exactly as this article is speaking about. In private, I even, one of them, I went to his house during the nonsense, when you weren't allowed to. You weren't allowed out to play. Mark's not coming out to play today. Went round to his house. Him and his partner were fine about that. They came round here. They knew it was BS on a certain level, but still, in public, went along with it. I remember the other lad just thought it was funny. He just thought it was funny. He used to go around taking pictures of all the stupid signs and all the stupidity, a bit like what you should do, laugh at it. But he still went along with it. He still behaved the way he was being asked to behave in public. And that is absolute cowardice. I remember the first time we went out, the three of us went out for what can only comically be called a pub crawl round Newcastle city centre. And I say comically, this was when the pubs had just reopened in July. I think it was the first. I think they reopened on a Friday and this was the Saturday. Anyway, it doesn't matter. And this is when you had to do like nonsense things like, you couldn't go to the bar. You had to be table served. You couldn't pay with cash and other things that and half of the pubs just didn't have the infrastructure set up to deal with this. But anyway, I'm going off the point. The point is, very first pub, I had a bit of anxiety around the whole mask nonsense. You had to wear a mask in a pub, not sitting down obviously because it only gets you when you stand up. I'll go to the toilet, as I've said previously. It's so intelligent. It knows when you're vulnerable and when you've got your pants down, and that's when it strikes, when you're in the toilet. So anyway, I've got a bit of anxiety because about going into that first pub because there is no way I'm putting a nappy on my face for anybody. So anyway, we walked into this first pub, Newcastle Arms, I think it was. And barmaid, proper aggressive barmaid. The first lad, the lad who thought everything was funny, was sat in the far end of the bar at his table, sitting having his pint. And me and the other lad, who's a total left brain control freak. Me and him walked in, and barmaid straight away pointing at you, "Get your mask on, lads, get your mask on," like really aggressively, as if like, as if just World War III is going to break out if you don't put that mask on. It's just, what? Anyway, he's probably sick of asking people. Stop asking them then. So anyway, where was I? So I walked in, put your mask on, and me left brainer mate, who's a total dominator, who his characteristic or typical characteristic of these left brainers is that they don't want to follow other people's rules. They think they are above rules, all laws, no morals. They only comply if they think they've got something to lose. And he was trying to argue with the barman. He's trying to argue, saying, "Look, my mate's over there at that table. I'm just walking over there." He was trying to argue common sense and logic, but he didn't want to comply at first, He was trying to use logic and common sense. It's that you can't reason with nonsense, and you can't reason with unreasonable people. So anyway, in the end, he, almost like a childish tantrum, puts these black England rugby team mask on with a little rose in the corner, nice little pretty English rose. You coward. And I'm thinking, and then I'm behind him, so I just calmly said to the barman, well, it was calmly, but it was with some amount of arrogance, or no, not arrogance, some amount of sarcasm. I just said, "What happens if you're exempt?" Because everybody's exempt. Every single person was exempt. You just don't do it. Anyway, what happens if you're exempt? And the barman just, he seemed to calm down a bit, and he just said, will you just tell us? And I said, I'm exempt. Go on, get yourself in. I just walked across. And I'm just thinking, that's all you needed to do. You cowards. It's all you needed to do was stand your ground and just say that. And he didn't ask why I was exempt. None of your fucking business, mate. But he didn't ask. He's just, as long as it was a get out clause. And there is no point standing there arguing, because you're never going to win. You're never going to win an argument with these people. Especially, they think they've got some sort of duty to enforce this. You're never going to win that argument. But, there is, or there was, a loophole. Just use it, you fucking idiots. Anyway, that was the only time I got asked. That was the only time. We only went to about 4 or 5 bars because it was awful. It was just awful. As in, the atmosphere, there was none. Having to sit at tables and stupid waiter service. Anyway, interestingly, the Left Brainer, when we went to all of the other bars, even though they weren't asking, and now this is psychologically, this is interesting. The rest of the bars, they really weren't bothered. I never had to have a confrontation again after that. It was just that one bar. Generally speaking, you'd walk in, 3 of us would walk in, and they'd just, you'd be greeted by a waitress, well, a barmaid really, having to act as a waitress, and say, all right, lads, do you want a table? And you say aye, and they never even challenge it. But most people weren't bothered. This is the thing, most people weren't bothered. But it was the conformists that actually loved conforming. They wanted to wear it. They wanted to look virtuous. So anyway, where was I? So you'd walk in, and the a member of staff would greet you and show you to a table or whatever. And then I was never asked again. But they still did it. Even the Left Brainer did it. He still put his fucking nappy on his face. His English rose nappy. But even more interestingly, so I would always be at the back. They would go in first, because I guess I was kind of like, didn't want to walk in first because I wanted to prepare in case there was going to be some sort of challenge. So anyway, the Left Brainer, he would walk in, they'd put their nappies on, and he would say to the member of staff, he'd point at me like that and go, he's one of them weird ones. He's one of them weird. That's what he would say when we went into every pub. He was embarrassed. He had to make excuses for us. Why are you embarrassed for me? I'm not embarrassed. I don't mind. Or was it, is he frustrated about, I'm getting away with it? I've got the balls to actually just say no, or use the loophole, whatever. But my point is, it's just behaviours. Very, very fascinating. He's one of those weird ones. What the one who's actually got some self-respect. You put a fucking nappy on your face, mate, you've got no self-respect. Anyway, so that was that story. They all capitulated, obviously, with the old William Shakespeare when that came along. No surprises. Oh, and then there were, funny enough, surprisingly, extremely, extremely ill the following winter, to the point where the Left Brainer said, he actually said to us, because I thought I was going to die. It's just me and him went for a beer, and he was telling us, thought I was going to die. You had it, Mark. You had it. As in the thing, the disease. Have you had no? No. And you can see the logic cogs ticking round in his brain. Must have a strong immune system. It's called a bullshit radar, mate. So anyway, I wonder why your immune system hasn't been able to cope. Anyway, I couldn't cope with these people in the end, and they're unbearable to be around. So ignorant, cowardice. Anyway, that's a story for, I'm not going to go off on one. That's a story for another day, maybe. The next anecdote I wanted to just share, which I thought was very relevant. Again, 2020 PSYOP season. So this is 2021, this story, and it's September 2021. So if you can cast your mind back, we had allegedly had Freedom Day here in the UK or in England. I think that was June. Was that classed as June 2021? Anyway, but they started ramping things up again in September when the kids started going back to school. And, things like wearing nappies on your face. And my daughter was 11 at the time, and she was just starting high school. I mean, to just start high school, thankfully they didn't have any nonsense nappy wearing in the primary school. Funny that. As you get older, you're meant to come out of nappies, aren't you? It seemed to be the other way around. So they didn't have any nappy wearing policies in the primary school, but she was transitioning to high school in 2021. And it was just, myself and our mum, my wife, we were dreading them bringing back the nappy wearing rules in schools for our daughter starting high school. It should be a great thing. I know the education system is just a indoctrination camp, but she chose to go there. We give her the choice. She chose to go there, and it should be a good, exciting experience, at least from a social point of view. 11-year-old, but then they brought the mask nonsense back in, and obviously this gave myself and a mum, like I say, a bit of anxiety, and we just felt for her so much. And she was, we had told her as much as what we could tell her about the truth. You cannot tell them too much at that age, but she was very aware of what our thoughts were and what the truth. She had a good idea what the truth is. Anyway, first day she's leaving the house to walk down to the bus stop, and I think it was the night before she had a little quiet word with her mum and said, "Look, I don't want to wear one of those things. I don't want to wear one. But can I put one in my school bag just in case?" And I just... bastards. So she had asked if she could put one just have one in her school bag just in case it was, you know, she was obviously fearful of what was going to happen, and she just wanted one just in case. And we didn't have any anyway. But God, how do you try and encourage an 11-year-old to be brave in a school that she's never been to? It's her first day around peers that she's never met, teachers that she doesn't know, and you know, she's going to stand out like a sore thumb. I don't blame her. But we had a word with her, both of us, separately and together, and I put a document together with what she should say to anybody who challenges her. You know, almost like, you know, along sort of like a legal entitlement and stuff like that. And, you know, we give her this script, in other words. And she you know, so she had that on her phone, and she could almost just ask. We even said, just show them it. Anybody challenges you, just show them. And you know, you're hoping that the kids are just not going to be doing it anyway, because the kids don't want to do it. You know, unless they're in class and they're being, you know, enforced by some sick sociopath at the front of the classroom, then they'll probably not do it anyway. So I didn't really think she would get any grief off other children. But anyway, I mean, so she went to school, obviously no mask, with this armed with some words and some truth. And yeah, she went to school first day, and didn't wear a nappy on her face. And as you know, when she did get challenged, that's what she did. She did exactly what we told her she should do. And then when she realised that we were right, and that she could do this, and that it was her right to be able to breathe, then she obviously gained in confidence. And in the end, it was just, you know, she just didn't. This is an 11-year-old. She's a good girl. She's not rude. She's polite. She's very considerate. She's very generous. This is not somebody who, it's not like some tearaway kid who just doesn't care about breaking rules. This is somebody who understands the difference between right and wrong. And the more confidence she got, the more that she was just, you know, it didn't affect her. And but every day was like, she'd come home from school, every day would be like, did you get any grief today? Did you get any grief today? Because you were just riddled with anxiety on behalf of her. She didn't have any. At that point, we did. And she just stood up to the bastards. And in the end, the teachers, they knew that we had told her to do this or encouraged her to do it. She's not doing it because we've told her. She's doing it because she wants to do it, and we've encouraged her. The teachers got wind of this. There might be the odd phone call, and, you know, we would just put it in black and white to them. You know, she's not wearing one, and you can't enforce her. We didn't say she's exempt. We didn't say anything like that. Just cold, hard facts. You have no right. And then with daughter, you'd say, what about all the other kids? And she'd say, sitting at the back of the class, and the kids have got these bits of plastic over their face. At the back of the class, one of her friends was saying, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. And our daughter would just say, just take it off. just you don't have to wear it. But they didn't have the courage. These are 11-year-olds. And I just felt for them. And even when our daughter was doing it, not conforming, I think the vast majority of the other kids still just conformed. It's just so sad. Not being able to breathe, wearing that shit on your face. It's child abuse. Children, it's just ridiculous, absolutely pathetic. And then we say, well, and what are the teachers like with you when you refuse or whatever? And she said, oh well, they know I don't do it now. So when you're in the classroom and they're coming in the classroom, this is how she described it to it. The kids aren't wearing a mask because they don't want to. And if they choose not to, you should respect that choice. And they would just go like pointing to them like little Hitlers, the teachers that is, just point at them and go, mask, 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 mask on, and just like a Hitler type figure. It's just. But when they were pointing, they would just miss out our daughter because they knew they couldn't enforce it. So they just mask, miss one out, mask. And it's just like, it's just ridiculous. They know they can't enforce it, but they're still doing it because they're sick in the head. Why? How you can do that to children? But anyway, and that was our daughter. Went to she went from a tiny primary school. I think there was only 4 people in her actual year through primary school. Very small school, and then she went to this big school in a big town, huge school, and that was it. Brave, courage, true courage from an 11-year-old. An 11-year-old has more backbone than my so-called friends, cowards. And I can't remember how long the mask nonsense lasted after that. I think it only lasted. Well, I'm saying only. It might be. It doesn't matter. It might have been a couple of months, and then they tried to bring it back in the January, and they didn't eventually. And we had a couple of meetings with the head on some occasions because of the way the teachers were talking to our daughter. We just we're not having this. Put a complaint in. Got to see the head. I think I took in 1,000. I sent them 1,000 links to articles, scientific studies, and all the rest of it about the nonsense of these things. But it just doesn't go in. It's just futile. But anyway, so not all teachers, obviously, but they're just like little children themselves. They've never matured. Their controllers think they've got authority over children. Pick on the vulnerable. One of the teachers lived nearby, and this is one of the teachers that used to speak to them like trash. I mean, what would you do if you're in a shop, you're in a store somewhere with your 11-year-old, and some absolute sociopath comes up to your child, let's just say that they don't know you're with them. Let's just say you're opposite ends of the shop, and you witness them start speaking to them like absolute trash. What would you do? What would you do? But for some reason in schools, it's fine. And this teacher lived just down the road. The only thing stopping us, super gluing a mask to his face, was it wouldn't do my daughter any good. But, one absolute coward, scared of children, scared of them, running around in case, the little child might contaminate you. Funny how it didn't affect children, isn't it? Didn't affect children. But somehow they could pass it on, even though it didn't affect them, had no symptoms whatsoever. And I think zero healthy children succumbed to it. Only children who, I think there was a few who, had other debilitating problems. But anyway, I wonder why it didn't affect children. Well, come on, Mark, it's because children have strong immune systems. Do they? All right. So they're physically weaker than adults, mentally weaker than adults, emotionally weaker than adults, spiritually weaker than adults, but somehow they've got a stronger immune system. Even though everything is still developing. I wonder if it's because children have no fear. Pandemic of fear didn't get inside their heads. So yeah, just every single teacher in that school, not naming any names, won't name the school. It's not the school where Harry Potter went to. Every single teacher, coward, absolute coward, blanket statement. And if I'm wrong, show your face. So, how did he end the article? The world is run by a bunch of satanic PDF files. Did we not know this, though?
Anyone with any sense who was in trouble would come to the whips and tell them the truth. They'd say, no, I'm in a jam, can you help? It might be debt, it might be scandal involving small boys, or any kind of scandal which a member seemed likely to be mixed up in. They'd come and ask if we could help. And if we could, we did. And we would do everything we can, because we would store up brownie points. That sounds a pretty nasty reason, but it's one of the reasons. Is if we can get a chap out of trouble, then he'll do as we ask forevermore.
One of the reasons. Pretty disturbing statue there in the background. But we've known this. How long have we known this for? just going back to the left brainer, seems to be struggling with the fact that I don't want anything to do with these people anymore, including him. Keep getting drunken texts every now and again. One of them said the other week, in relation to the Epstein files, maybe you were right all along. And I'm thinking, well, just stop trying to provoke us into a reaction. Because, quite frankly, if you're trying to suggest that you're willing to maybe accept that I've been right on a few things, then do you think I'm honestly going to think that you know anything because you need the mainstream media to tell you? I've been saying things like this for years, and you wouldn't go away and validate it yourself. But now the mass media is telling you. Now all of a sudden you can now believe it, because you won't believe anything unless you're told by the system. So don't and this is the thing with people. This is how it works. People won't wake up or raise their awareness, become aware of what's going on in the world until the mass media tells them. But as far as the files are concerned, do I believe that there's a secret cabal of PDFs running the show, or certainly having a good part in running the show in the dark corridors of power? Do I believe that? Yeah. Do I believe they're at the very top? No. Do I believe that this dark, shadowy, corrupt bunch of PDFs are doing their business on on Gmail? Do I believe that they're doing that shadowy business on Gmail? Not convinced about that. But anyway, what's it there for? One thing's for sure, we're not being told the whole truth. Do we think there's just one Epstein? Of course there's not. But anyway, let's move on. So, until people raise the level of consciousness, then we are not going to improve the state of society. Courage is it's the golden level. Not as in, gold at the top there as enlightenment. But courage is the level where everything changes. You have to have the courage to stand up, the courage to speak out, the courage to walk away when you know that you are supporting something that hasn't got your best interests at heart. The courage to walk away. This is exactly the same as, the system, the control system is psychopathic. It wants you under its control. And it wants you in fear. And if you were in a relationship with a psychopath, what would you do? Would you just stay for more abuse? Or would you have the courage to walk away, regardless of what you might lose? You might be in a relationship, you might be in a romantic relationship with a psychopath. You find out they're a psychopath. It could be hard to leave. You might lose things. You might lose money and status. But you've got to have the courage to walk away. And you've got to have the courage to call them out for what they are. And that psychopath, that's where they want you. In suffering, in hell, in your lower ego, in the third dimension, in the dog-eat-dog control system. That's where the psychopaths want you. In the victim-abuser state of consciousness, where you're either the abuser to survive, or you become the victim. It's the left-right paradigm of consciousness. One is the abuser, the controller, the manipulator, and the other is the willing victim, the slave. And I want you down there in hell, fighting, constantly fighting for consumables, for material goods, for reasons that are still escape me, called football, egotistical tribe mentality. That's where the control system needs you to be. That's where fear is, apathy, pride. Very prideful people, aren't they? Who know that something isn't right. They know that something is a load of BS, but they don't want to lose their social standing, or, potentially cost them, hit them in the pocket if they do make a stand. Or just people might laugh at them. They don't want to lose face. It's pride. And they'll put that pride, they'll put their own dysfunctional pride before anything else. They are purely selfish. And they do not have the courage to come out of that. They actually quite like it. They love their servitude. And pride, we know, comes before a fall. And if they don't do anything, these are the people in the middle, the people who know something's not right. You've got the people who are somewhat aware in the middle. You've got people with a high level of awareness, the minority, and then you've got the dead. In fact, dead's not the right word. No, I'm going to stick with dead. The level of consciousness is so low. They are. This is what the occult calls them. The people in the dark occult corridors. This is what they refer to. Well, to everybody really. But for these people, I would agree. The dead. That's what they call them, because they haven't even started that journey yet. And they never will. There's a section in the middle who are somewhat starting to scratch their head. And they're the people who've got to have the courage. And everybody else who knows, everybody else who is somewhat, has a higher level of awareness, need to do their bit. And that's the courage, because if we don't, through the dysfunctional pride, that collective dysfunctional pride, there's going to be a huge fall into hell. You know, the system, the control system, the psychopaths who have all of the power. Do you think they want a load of self-empowered and self-realized people running around? You know, billions of us with, you know, a fully functioning mind which understands morals and can reason and join dots and see the control grid and the patterns of behaviors and what's actually going on. They don't want people. They want in that at that level of consciousness. This is like with everything. It's an attack on consciousness, and they want to destroy consciousness. But they want you down in that lower ego self. That's how you control people. Especially the left-brainers. The left-brainers are so arrogant that they believe they can't be duped. They believe they can't be controlled and manipulated. And they believe that, you know, they know everything. That if you've got a mind control expert, a dark occult psychologist, and you've got a left-brainer, an extreme left-brainer, arrogant, and he comes out with that. The dark occultist is just doing that. They're his best victims. They're the ones where it's just like taking sweets from a baby to manipulate and control those types of people. This was a brave man who's pretty much lost everything. Dr. Cartland, David Cartland. This is going back to when he was struck off as a practicing medical doctor. Struck off yesterday while a doctor who had sex with a patient in his surgery and then prescribed her the morning after pill did not lose his license, only suspended for the second time. So Dr. Cartland was struck off just very briefly. I think he wrote a couple of letters for patients to enable them to go abroad without having to have the William Shakespeare. And that was deemed as, you know, against protocol, whatever. And as a result of that, he's not only lost his license, he's also been put on, I can't remember what the name of the list is. It's like a list that criminals go onto. And, excuse me, I was just distracted there. So criminals go onto this list, and it affects your ability to get jobs. You know, so the employers would search this database, and if you're on it, you probably wouldn't get the job. And he's also been put on a list which means that he can't work with vulnerable adults or children. These are the list that criminals go on to. And he hasn't committed any crime. He hasn't been convicted of any crime. He hasn't been accused of any crime. Nothing's been reported to the police. There is no crime number. He's never been to a criminal court. He hasn't even been allowed to provide evidence to defend himself on these injustices. And so he's being treated like a criminal, but hasn't done anything criminal, and he's been put on these lists for just in case. So normally you would go on the list because you've done something. He's been put on just in case. That's the justification. Even though, you know, what he's been accused of, you know, he's lost his license and all the rest of it. It had nothing to do with vulnerable adults and children. It was just writing a patient a letter. So he's been put on these lists that's normally, you know, reserved for criminals, and he hasn't actually done anything to warrant it. It's just in case. This is like pre-crime. Even though he is no risk to society, yet he's being treated like a criminal. It's like pre-crime. And this is where we're going. And his story is fascinating. He also, as part of being on that list, he's not allowed to referee children's football matches, which is one of his passions, being a referee. He's not allowed to referee children's football matches. He's not allowed to take any other child in his car to the football. So he would go and watch football with his son and his son's friend. He's not allowed to take that friend in his car anymore. And when he does watch football, when he watches his son play football, it's mental. He's not allowed to actively participate. So he's got to sit there in his seat at the football, and he's not allowed with his arms folded. He's not allowed to speak, let alone shout or chant or cheer. Not allowed to cheer. He's not allowed to wave his arms. He's not allowed to do anything, because doing anything is classed as actively participating. So when his son scores a goal, he's not allowed to do anything. This guy is being destroyed. They're trying to destroy him, everything about him, and his spirit. They're sick, and this is the direction. And they know what they're doing because they've acknowledged. We know this is going to, you know, have huge implications on your mental health. But we think it's a balanced approach. Honestly, anyway, I've just put a picture there of. I listened to his story on Sheep Farm Studios YouTube channel, and they've got a website as well, number 270. If you want to have a listen to his story, I think it's the first hour of that podcast features Dr. David Cortland. It's honestly, it's so angering, and people need to start standing up, speaking out, do something. To examples of courage.
Unfortunately, I think this is just the beginning. So I've learned when people tell you what they're going to do, don't ignore them. So when the UN and Bill Gates and Klaus Schwab tell you that they've got a UN 2030 plan with sustainable development goals, I think there are 17 or 21 of them, and every one of them says you won't be travelling, you won't have a private car, we won't be using international shipping to move goods around, there won't be any flights except military or perhaps very rich people. You won't own anything and you'll be happy. You probably won't live in your own house. You'll be using much less energy for everything, including heating, manufactured goods, and so on. When they tell you that, you should assume that they're serious about it. And so I think COVID has been part one of a multi-act play that's going to take 10 years that will destroy the liberal democracies completely. We've already, if you think living in a democracy, now ask yourself who you could vote for that would change this. Because I don't think there's anyone you can vote for anywhere that is guaranteed things. So I don't have an answer, but I'm telling you, I think we're sliding down through the gates of hell. I am speaking out. There's nothing in it for me. I've lost lots of money, all my friends. I'm away from my home and family. And I'm speaking out because, as I close, I am absolutely sure what I've told you is substantially true.
Slipping through the gates of hell. So, the awakening technique. Stop lying to yourself. Stop dreaming. Stop pretending everything's fine in the world. Learn how to think. Get out of your ego, out of your emotions. Use your brain. Learn how to think. Live in the present moment. Don't live in the past. Don't live in the future. Activate. Get active. Look after yourself and do something. And just before I go, just quick promotion there. My other YouTube channel is called Word of Mouth Recordings. It's just a music channel. If you'd like to chill out. I promise my voice isn't on it. Particularly the live section. It's not live music. It's just a live broadcast, music broadcast that I do every Friday, 9 till 11, obviously. So yeah, Word of Mouth Recordings. And I just wanted to finish just by quoting some lyrics which seem to resonate. Now the fun is over. Where do words begin? I'm trying to find the path ahead. And any way you say it, the charade goes on. But your eyes won't see it. It's the same old song. Promises so golden, but the years have proven them wrong. I'm trying to leave some self-respect, but any way you say it, our decline goes on. But your pride won't heed it. It's the same old song, and I don't believe you. And as usual, I like to finish with a good reminder of the difference between natural law and made-up horse manure manslaughter based on dogma, the construct of psychopaths' minds, which is complied with using fear, and which can differ based on where you're standing, and can change with time based on the whims of these psychopaths. Right, I'm a bit peckish. I hope you've enjoyed that presentation. It was a bit shorter for once, but I hope you enjoyed that presentation, and I'll see you later.